Welcome, everybody. Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, coaching, practice, podcast, and newsletter dedicated to helping women earn better and feel better. That's my big thing. I want y'all to feel better first. The feelings come first, and then we earn better because of it. And I have a new show. It's called Higher Ground. I'm going to be putting these links in the chat, by the way. This show comes out every month. And today's panel discussion, it's actually going to be part of the show. But don't worry, everybody who is here live and in the chat, no one will see who you are on YouTube. No one will see what you're writing on YouTube. So this is a sacred space for our live participants. But afterwards, what I post every month is basically a rundown of what's going on in the job market. Usually interview an expert or two, and I answer a question from our community of 50,000 women. Because you registered for this event, you're going to be on the email. So you'll get more information about it afterwards. But I want to introduce our panelists real quickly before I frame our conversation and jump right into, is AI coming for your job? Yikes. It is and it isn't. We're going to tell you really happy, awesome, good, positive stuff. And we're also maybe going to say some things that'll not scare you, but motivate you. Jenny Pollock is my first panelist here. She is a co-founder of Women Times AI. She is, in her words, a visionary leader shaping AI's future through inclusion and innovation. Jenny amplifies underrepresented voices in AI and has helped spotlight over 130 AI leaders in 2024, and as a recognized AI thought leader and fractional CMO. So if you're all interested in hearing more about what is fractional work, I think this is also the future of work. She can talk to you about that. She brings real-world perspective on how AI transforms marketing, branding, and business strategy. And Lori Adams Brown, Director of Global Talent Development, Future of Work expert, and podcast host with 20 plus years of leading workforce transformation across North America, Latin America, and Asia. Lori specializes in preparing organizations for AI-enabled transformation. So she can also speak not just to the individuals, what do we have to do as employees, but also as employers, how we can be thinking about AI. And she hosts the top 5% global podcast called A World of Difference and advises C-suite leaders on future-proofing their workforce. All right, I'm going to drop a link in the chat, a couple of links in the chat. The first one, and all of these, by the way, open in a second tab. So don't replace us, stay with us. But this first link, and I will include all of it in the follow-up email I send to everybody afterwards. This is what the White House literally just released. I don't know if it was today, yesterday, like literally,
yesterday, right?
Yeah, hot off the presses. Okay. They are very optimistic about the workforce. They are positioning AI as a job creator and productivity enhancer, not a job destroyer. Okay. With massive investments planned for worker retraining and skills development. I want to have a very candid conversation with our panelists here and with all of you about the good, bad, and the ugly of what AI is doing to our jobs. Now, a lot of us may know what it's doing for our ability to, I don't know, get key takeaways or take notes, or maybe we use it as a tool to make work a little bit better. But then what happens to the work if AI is so good at helping us that it replaces us? There's fear. I want us to distill the fear, see how much of it is happening today, already happened, is it happening tomorrow? And most importantly, what can we actually do? So this is not going to be a chat about some like mindset shifts. Like we will always have a mindset shift. Sometimes we need to see things and think things a little bit differently. But I really want to say what is happening on Monday when it comes to work. And so the real question is maybe not that AI is going to take your job, but how do you position yourself to be among the, they say this, 78 million apparently, new opportunities are being created because of AI. So a lot of people are getting displaced because of AI, yes, but there will be a net 78 million new jobs created because of AI. What are these jobs? How do we get these jobs? That's it for me. That's all I got. I got questions on questions. I don't know, Jenny, Lori, whoever wants to jump in first, maybe because I just dropped that White House, very optimistic. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at it. I ran it through AI, obviously, because that's what we're doing here for the key takeaways. And it was a lot of positivity. What are your thoughts right off the bat? Why'd you say yes to this panel? Maybe I'll start with you, Jenny. Ask to unmute. I think I asked both of y'all to unmute.
Okay,
Yeah.
mine's in. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Okay, so why did I say yes to this panel? First of all, Claire, you're just really fun to hang out with. So I was like, yes, let's have a chat. And Secondly, AI is so important. I think one of the things, when ChatGPT first launched, there was a big gap between who was using it and who wasn't, who was waiting for permission from their employer and who wasn't. And so there is this gender gap in AI, and I want AI to be built by all of us because we're all going to use it and it's all going to impact each one of us. And so if we're not in the room making the decisions where AI is being built, we're going to be not included in the next era of computing. So it's really important
Yeah.
that we are all using AI and upskilling in AI. I
Yeah.
just think it's important. So that's what
I
we're going to talk
I also
about.
curious for everybody here who's live, if you are one of those folks who felt very hesitant to adopt it. I have been. I'm a relatively recent convert, but very enthusiastic to using it. But I was one of those, Jenny was talking about AI, and I'm like, this scares me because I don't know anything about it. And I was only hearing negative stuff, to be honest. But Lori, tell me, why did you say yes other than Jenny's vouching for me?
It's always fun to hang out with people like the two of you who are amazing. I'd get to be on How and Lead Board with Jenny, and we both have podcasts and talk a lot about that. But it's great to meet you finally, Claire. I've followed your newsletter for a while and love the work that you do. Ladies do deserve to get paid, and I'm a big proponent of that as well. But I guess I'm a bit of an early adopter with AI, so I get that this research shows that sometimes women have been a little more hesitant, and so I think that from my point of view, working in talent development here in Silicon Valley, which has a bit of diversity, but also can be a bit of a bubble. But I do work globally. So my job takes me around the world with our company. And so I do listen to our leaders and grew up overseas in a bunch of countries and have lived as an expat in a bunch of countries. So I think that it's a global conversation is a more helpful one and a more maybe accurate one. So I like to quote the World Economic Forum
Mhm.
statistic. It's important to understand the US and what they're putting out there, whether or not you trust the information
Yeah.
coming out from that source, which is a whole other podcast. I think AI panic really can be somewhat rooted in some reality of real workforce disruption. So we probably have people even here in the chat. If you work at Microsoft, if you work at some of these places where jobs have recently been laid off, and the reason often given is due to AI changes. So I think there was a time where I and many in my industry in talent development here in Silicon Valley were saying something similar. And I used to hear a lot of people say, AI isn't taking your job, someone using AI will. I
Mm.
always added to that, someone using AI who's very human centered in their leadership approach will. Because I think it's this human centered partnership with AI that's key to the future of work. But the reality is, with my integrity, I can no longer feel honest in saying it won't absolutely take over your job because some jobs we're seeing that happen even in very recent weeks here in Silicon Valley. I think the good news is that's the bad news.
Right.
The good news is that it is transforming work, it's transforming my job. I've had two big meetings today about AI. I created an AI agent within the company where I work for our leadership coaching and that type of thing. And it's in process. And I'm talking to people in the UK and on the East Coast, and we're working it out. So it's transforming my job and the jobs of people that I lead. But I think the World Economic Forum, it gives us some hope. So it does predict that while 85 million jobs may be displaced by automation and technological advances within 2025, 97 million new jobs will be created in the same time frame. And so this suggests a net positive impact on the job market. So the projected increase is 12 million jobs overall. And so that's the good news. So if you're one of those people that AI has taken your job, I think upskilling and finding ways to find where you can fit into these 12 million new jobs is really what I'm advising people to do.
Do you mind going into a little bit of detail if you feel comfortable about what you created or what you're in the process of creating? I think you said an AI agent. I know that could be and should be and will be an entirely other event and podcast that we'll do. But just to inspire people with an example of how to think creatively about ways to use AI, not just to make your job better, but actually to be literally part of your job.
Yes, I will also let Jenny speak to this because she's one of the many people that inspired me to do it. So,
Okay.
anyway, just add that little plug for you in a second. But I would just say many people in talent development, and there's a lot of vendors out there that could do this for you or help you create it within your company and your leadership structures. But a lot of people I talk to in my industry are doing this kind of thing where you put And so maybe you're a CHRO and you put in all of your training documents, or you have your training team do that into an AI, an agent, and then it can coach you on those training documents. So a lot of us in corporate training we understand that if 10% of the people that come to our trainings got a lot out of it, that's a win. Human learning and development, adult learning means you're going to forget a lot of what you just sat in a classroom for 3 hours to learn about in your training room. And so having a 24/7 AI coach that can be available. My team's not available 24/7. We are a distributed global team, but still we don't have the capability of being there all the time in ways that people might have questions for us, but AI can. And so these agents can be created to put the information of your culture, your values, what you're training your employees on in a way that allows them to practice those or reinforce those skills. But I'll let Jenny talk a little more about it because I think she knows a lot more about the tech side.
Sure. I think for me, when I'm looking at the agentic AI side of things, it's often when you're using AI and there's even a piece of it where you're allowing AI to take actions on its own. And I love what Lori was saying about creating this repository, whether that's in ChatGPT with a custom GPT. Now, that is on the $20 a month paid plan, but it is quite worth it. For my different clients that I have a bunch of those spun up for each client, and it will write and work in that tone of voice for that company, for that client. It's really cool. If you want a free version, Notebook LM by Google. You can also create a custom notebook. So that's a really good way to do that. And you can get it trained on the stuff. You can give it your context, your voice, your past work. Like someone like you, Claire, you could feed in your whole book. You could feed in all of the
I
amazing.
have.
Yeah, exactly. And you can have it so it gets pretty good. Now, granted, you should always work with your AI and collaborate. It's probably not always perfectly you when it comes out, but it's probably pretty close if you've given it the right context.
I thought you were going to say always work with your brain.
I mean, that too, right?
Yeah.
That's important because you remember things differently when you use AI. And so you do also want to not just trust it because
Right.
sometimes it gets stuff wrong.
It
Let's
does.
let's reset some 101 because I don't know how this feels like we went into a very AP level version of you're using a word I don't even know, agnetic. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. So let's just bring it down to 101 for me. When we're talking about AI, AI can obviously encompass a lot of different, it's robotic machine learning. I guess it is fundamental. The platforms most people are probably familiar with, and guys who are here live, jump in the chat, Chat GPT, Claude, maybe Claude actually. So Chat GPT is the big one. I'll say Claude next, Grok, Perplexity. That's probably it ish. There's probably a lot of AI people are interacting with and not even aware of. But I would love for anybody who's here live, tell us what are you familiar with, what platforms, and I think that might be just helpful for our audio, our panelists to just gauge our language that we're using here. In terms of jobs that are being affected, do you remember who was the canary in the coal mine? Not to make it a quiz here, but what was when the history, what industries were affected first? Or what were you starting to see things maybe before other people were seeing it? Where you're like, that industry or that role. I see those entry level jobs, or I'm curious, or maybe it was virtual assistants being hired through Upwork in the Philippines was the precursor to now those people are being replaced by AI. What was the first signals that you were starting to see real different hiring decisions being made? Maybe a Lori question because you're a talent, or maybe you were
Yeah.
making different decisions. Maybe you were the canary, or you knew the canary.
Well, I have two spaces I think that I started to notice it, both in the work here in Silicon Valley in the tech company where I work as an executive, but I also host a podcast. So there's a whole other thing going on in that industry as well. And I would say largely at least from my perspective, the beginnings of it were something as simple as note taking. I think that's some of the productivity we're starting to see a lot of people early adopt as well. And it seems to be, at least in the conversations I have with people, that seemed to be the thing people felt a little more comfortable having a video recording of their video call and then they get transcriptions of it. So that is similar to what was happening in the podcast world. So I am about to have the fifth anniversary of my podcast soon. And so 5 years in, early on, yay! Early on, I had a decision. Do I hire somebody that helps me write these show notes and helps me be productive? Or do I invest in this AI platform that's women owned called Capshow, and it just does it all for you. So did that take over a job that I would have otherwise hired for? Yeah, I think so. And it was available to me 24/7, whereas somebody in the Philippines, as wonderful as they are, and I love the Philippines, they have the best mangoes, it would have been time zone changes. And so just the convenience of that meant those show notes could show up from AI, and they do get it wrong sometimes. It does make mistakes, but then I can just proof and check it out. So I think we started to see that really early on. Also, we're starting to see a lot of like research. So AI has done a really not perfect job, but if you need some research and say, give me quotes, give me articles, give me data, it's so much faster than a human. Still not perfect. You have to check the links because they're not always accurate or they don't always exist, but it is faster. So I think those research jobs in a certain level, and then the note taking for productivity were some of the early ones. What did you see, Jenny?
For me, I saw a lot of different things happening. And as the person who often takes the notes because I want to, but then have to do all this extra work to make it like production ready, because everyone's like, you're taking notes already. Can you do it? Can you share? I'm like, okay. So it was really nice at first. I was like, this is great. I can just not be the note taker anymore. But then you look at what is that impact and what is that having? And so I see a couple different things that started to happen. Duolingo, for example, they said that they weren't going to use humans to do their translations anymore to get their content courses created. And that actually backfired pretty quick. There was a big backlash from their audience, heavily Gen Z, and cost them some money. And I believe they're reversing on it now. Klarna also had a similar thing. They said that they laid off a bunch of people and said that AI was going to do all of their customer service. And that didn't work very well for them. And so they ended up hiring more humans back. And so for me, when I'm looking at this, I think there are a lot of companies who are quick to make decisions based on what AI can do, but not thinking about what AI should do. There's a lot of nuance to handling customer support questions. And so some of it can be automated, perhaps, but you might want a human in the loop. You might want some person to actually review what you're sending out before it goes out to the customer. So there are some things that I think need to be put in, some fail safes and that kind of thing as we're looking at how this is going to play out in the corporate world.
So Jenny, speaking of corporate world, so you've worked with hundreds of AI leaders. What patterns are you seeing in terms of which roles are actually being eliminated versus which ones are being enhanced?
Yeah, I think it depends on the company and what the company's values are. Oh, and if they're looking at a short-term view or a long-term view, right? Is it just this quarter? Are they going to let go of a bunch of people, but not actually be thinking about that long-term view? The companies that are going to win in the end are actually the ones who are investing in their workforce and upskilling. A lot of companies have employee education budgets. If they're not giving you AI training, see if you can use that education budget to go take an AI course or even to expense some AI tools. You might need to get them approved by your company, but still, you're going to want to be thinking about this and be operating in this space so you can continue to maintain the roles that are there and you can grow with the shift. I saw somebody in the comments actually say they're hoping to grow with the technology, and I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Quick question though, for any, and I'm always going to come at this from a place of anxiety. What happens if you're afraid that by suggesting that you use AI and you make the business case for it, like you go, all right, if we purchase this tool, the investment will mean we're going to save X time and time is money. But the fear then is, oh no, did I just tell them that I'm either not that good at my job or I could end up getting replaced by AI? And Lori, obviously feel free to jump in as well. But
I
Jenny,
think
yeah.
it's how you pitch it and
Okay.
how you get it. So maybe if you have AI join, you can get more done instead of less. You can maybe have
Mhm.
a faster response time on your customer service tickets. And being able to position yourself as the AI expert on the team, I think would give you a stronger holding. Someone's going to have to manage the AI system. Somebody's going to have to train the AI system. So it's, yes, I get that it's a concern, but I do think you want to be playing in this space. Whether you decide to pitch it to your boss or not, that's a conversation.
Mhm.
You should be upskilling in it. And
Mhm.
I think you're in a stronger position if your boss knows you're upskilling in it. And I believe your company should be paying for it as well.
Laura, do you want to jump in on any of that if you have any specific examples, either from the work that you're doing or has anybody asked you, hey, can we integrate AI? And did that make you look at them differently? I'm curious.
I agree with a lot of what Jenny said. I think that if you're not speaking about AI and you're not integrating AI, that's the place where I worry for you. And I
Okay.
understand. I share some of the same fears and concerns. Do I want the Department of Defense to have access to AI? That terrifies me. There's
Right.
so many things about it that are truly scary. But at the same time, what I'm seeing from my point of view is if you're not at least curious to start learning, I do have concerns about your job security. I don't have as many concerns when you are using it and you're bringing it up to your manager and you're saying, here's the business case, because I think by and large, you're showing that you're transforming and you're curious and you're still learning. And I also agree that, maybe some certification, if that's a route you want to go. I think that as far as I can tell with the AI action plan that we just mentioned that came out from the government here in the US yesterday, without reading every single word of it, but like getting the highlights, it seems as though there is a potential of some of those things being paid for, or at least companies being able to be reimbursed for some of those things. I think that's good news. And that does give me hope because I think that it is so transformative and revolutionary for how we work. That should be happening.
I know everybody's, I'm assuming, in all different industries joining, although be curious if you're here live, tell us what industry you're in. Where can somebody start to do the research? This is a very 101 question. So maybe I'm asking which platform, depending on your industry, do you go to a different platform to say, hey, do I treat AI like I would replace Google? Again, asking very 101 questions here to build.
No, you have to start at 101, Claire, and I think that's the best thing. And we do that a lot with Women X AI is trying to make it okay for you to say, I don't even know what AI means. So when we talk, we always try and say, okay, it's artificial intelligence. We try and, really get rid of all of these acronyms all the time. It's so intimidating and it doesn't have to be. So I love that we're starting at the 101 level. What I would say is, it depends on what you're trying to do. And so I can make a bunch of different specific recommendations, but at the end of the day, it is moving so, so fast and it is hard to keep up. And my antidote for this is to learn AI in community. So coming here to things like this, joining Women X AI, it's free. Everyone's welcome, even our male allies, and being able to learn in a sense where you're able to ask those questions and say, hey, I don't know what this means, or hey, I tried this thing and it's not working. How do we do that? And so what I would say is if you don't have this in your calendar already, spend 20 minutes a week. Set yourself a recurring meeting, block that time and play with a new tool each week. And I've got a list of our 30 battle tested AI tools that some of our female founders have put together. I'll throw that in the chat. You can just go through that one at a time and see how it might impact your work.
Yeah. Quick question, actually. And I know I didn't send this to you beforehand, so it's okay if you don't have an answer off the top of your head, but let's get really specific about a prompt we could maybe give everybody to ask. Let's just start with ChatGPT or whatever people find is the easiest or most familiar with. The prompt of how will AI affect my job? Is that where we begin? Or could we ask something in a different way that would get a better answer? Because somebody on a panel once said to me, or said to the audience, and it really impacted me, was shit inputs equals shit output.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
But then that put some
Yeah.
pressure. Then my anxiety was like, oh no, are my inputs good enough? Maybe I could
Yeah.
get much better answer. Whoever, Lord or Jenny, if you have
Yeah, I think that
prompt.
more information you give it, my experience has been the better it can give you an answer. And so I spend a lot of time with different AI tools, and I have been known to argue with a few of them. So
Good. We like that.
don't worry, I have a therapist, so but no, so if it mansplains me or if it uses gender stereotypes, I let it know, and it has apologized to me, so that's the way to go. But I will say the more information I give and the better
Okay.
I'm at communicating, it's a two-way street. How do you communicate? Just like with humans in a different way. So I would recommend either giving some bullet points about the work that you do, maybe your own elevator pitch, but even more so if you could copy what you would put on a resume into there, or if you have what you put on LinkedIn and just copy that and just say, this is what I do. And then I would ask, how do you see it being transformed? And then I would also ask, what should I do to upskill myself for the future of work? I think you'll get some pretty surprising and hopefully accurate information.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
You can also give it a role. So I agree with everything Lori said, but you can also say act as a career coach with 30 years experience, and then put that everything that Lori said in there, and hopefully it will give you some suggestions that work. And think critically like we were talking about before. If it says something, you can push back and say, "Why did you think that? Explain your thinking." Or, "I don't want to do that. What else could I do?" And so be sure to push back. Lori's arguing with it, as you should. I do too.
I'm obsessed with all of the people in the chat right now. This is so great. Look at that. Christina, look, everyone's giving suggestions. This is why anybody watching on YouTube, love you, but come and join our live event so you can be in the chat. Everybody's sharing prompts and how they prime it. Excellent.
Mhm.
So good.
Memory settings. Yes, very helpful. The memory settings. ChatGPT has them. In my workplace, we have Microsoft Copilot and it remembers, but there's security around. And I think that's probably another aspect some people get afraid of is security,
Mhm.
especially within big enterprise corporations, especially here in tech, where we have a lot of secrets for sure, like about how the products are creating for obvious reasons. And even if you're using it within your business or corporation, there are ways that it can stay just internally, but it remembers for you what you want it to remember.
Okay, great. And by the way, if anybody here is concerned about security and wants us to talk about it, feel free to jump in the chat. It's an area that sometimes when I'm doing these events, people have a lot of feelings about. But I also wonder if it's a self-selecting crowd who comes today and we're already excited about AI. So if you're worried about it, about the security around it, about what you share, and you want us to go there, jump in the chat and let us know. Successful either people, industries, or roles or companies. Lori, does anything come to mind where you have thought of, wow, what a great example of how this CEO or this team leader, or hey, maybe it was you because it sounds like you're doing it with this trained AI agent, somebody who is really bringing AI into what they do and it's truly enhancing their work versus replacing their work?
So I'm going to start by saying it this way. Everybody I talk to says really hardly anyone is an expert in AI. There's maybe about 5 people, and they all live here in San Francisco, and I don't know them personally. But if people can come across as a know-it-all, nobody really likes a know-it-all. But if people pretend or put themselves out there as if they are just this expert on AI, it's probably not true. So I think the people that are doing it best are the people that are humble and curious enough to say, I'm using these tools, I'm learning, I'm a learn-it-all instead of a know-it-all. And I think a lot of those people right now that I know personally are working in the talent development space or the talent management space here in Silicon Valley because it is most people in the talent world care about people. We're in the people side of the business. And so it requires a certain level of empathy, knowing our decisions and the tools that we implement and the ethics of AI matter. And to the degree that it will either eliminate someone's job and that's a family and that's an income and that's a future, or it will help upskill them as we give learning and development around AI to help them move into the future. And so I know several people that I think are doing that really well. And I'm just lucky enough to be around them and learn as well from what they're doing. We spend a lot of time in my industry and my side of the business saying, what are you using? Here's what I'm using. And we help each other. I think that's the nature of learning and development is a lot of us are very curious to learn and we're curious about people and the future of work. I think a lot of people in the future of work space are doing a really great job with that, which is hopefully giving people some hope in the midst of some anxiety.
Yeah. So when people, this is just another kind of prompt and not for AI, but actually for ourselves to think about. The prompt would be as I am maybe reading or learning about someone else and how they're using AI, asking myself, what might be a prompt for your own? Like, how can I be inspired by this to think differently or to be okay with the unknown? Or, yeah, like how I really want everybody to start seeing connections from industries that maybe are not their own, but that they can go, hey, that's a unique way that person approached AI. And by the way, if y'all have actual people or resources, I know, Jenny, you've got a million. As you think of them and want to jump in the chat, go for it. Great. Sherry, thank you so much for putting that in there. Jenny, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, Claire, about learning in community, right? You want to be with other people who are thinking about this and have that, Lori, I love this phrasing, the learn it all mindset.
Yes, that was so good.
Yeah, it is so good. I think I'm going to be thinking about that all week, but it really is important to be putting yourself in environments like that. So coming to stuff like this, like you all are already doing it.
Now, people talk about, I don't know if it's paying lip service to it or if this is real, but the skills that are going to become even more celebrated and rewarded, hopefully financially rewarded, are the skills that AI can never have. I guess we're talking about, quote, soft skills, which I've never liked that word. Soft in this environment connotates weak, but they're powerful things that many women in particular have that are not technical per se, but I guess you would maybe say people oriented or empathy, or we can talk in more specifics in a second. But when they say, okay, focus on, yes, upskilling in terms of AI, but also focus on spotlighting these other skills that AI can never take. It's a great beginning of a sentence, but let's round it out a little bit more. What are we actually talking? What does that mean to you? And maybe, Lori, do you want to start? Because again, you're the talent person here. So, like, when you hear these things, what does it make you think?
Yeah, I find this really interesting, fascinating, and I'm often digging into this and reading as much as I can and learning as much as I can about it. Because I think that what we're seeing from my point of view, from this moment, we're recording this July 24th, 2025, so tomorrow it could be completely different because it's changing rapidly. But I think what we're seeing is there's a huge shift, even in what we're seeing children, and I'm a mother, and what education is having to shift, what skills are going to be important for the future. And a lot of it is unknown. But I think what we do know, at least from my point of view, is that human-centered skills are absolutely core for the future of work. And I cannot emphasize it enough. If you've ever thought of communication as a soft skill, that whole phrasing can be very deceptive because it implies it's not hard. I don't know about you, but I train globally on courses for my company that I've developed in my key leadership program for executives, individual contributors, everybody around Listen to Understand. It is one of the hardest courses we have, and it's our foundational course because I've trained it, I don't even know how many times in multiple languages, and I am still a work in progress when it comes to listening. Facts, feelings, and values are hard to listen to all at once. I'm still trying to master that. So if somebody says to me, I know how to, well, that's a red flag to me, and I think maybe you should come take my course. But all that to say, it is business critical for now. I mean, you could leave $1 billion deal on the table if you're a white person who comes from Silicon Valley and goes to Japan and doesn't understand that you need to read the air. Cultural skills are absolutely critical. They always have been, but I would argue they're more important in the future. So I spent a lot of the time with the key leadership program I developed on EQ and CQ. So emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence. These are not nice to haves. These are core competencies. These are leadership imperatives for the future of work. If you're not investing in those for yourself, I do fear that you're going to be left behind. I think complex problem solving would be another one, and strategic communication. And that involves even things we're seeing happen in Silicon Valley, even in the last, couple of months. Your internal comms with your company, how you're communicating the changes. People have anxiety about AI and how it's transforming work. I think the more you can be honest and transparent and authentic and validate how people feel, it matters so much. So if you're just communicating facts in your town hall or on your corporate board, people need more than just facts right now. They need to understand the values of the company. Are these just values on a wall, or do we live these? Because when I see a chief people officer and a CEO at a Coldplay concert, I suddenly wonder if anybody is following these values, right? And then Tiger Woods pulls his money from the company. So these are business critical that you learn how to be emotionally intelligent, culturally intelligent, communicate well, and really complex problem solving.
I agree with all of that. Sorry, Claire, were you going to say something? We can't hear you. Well, nope. Claire is working on that. I will just jump in.
Yeah.
So for me, I agree with everything Lori said. It is all about how you can communicate and lead. And keep in mind that leading a team might not look like it looks now. My friend Tatiana, she's got this amazing company called Wayfound, and she actually does work training agentic AI. So that's AI that can make decisions on your behalf. And it can actually act without you, which is like scary, but if there's guardrails in place, it can be okay. And so, anyways, my point is you might be leading a team that's half humans and some AI as well, like AI agents. And so these things might look different, but at the end of the day, the humans are the ones calling the shots, making the final decision, and really deciding where we're going to go next. And so you're going to have to be able to communicate what you're doing. And I think at the end of the day, AI is never going to be able to do that the same way a person can, right? There's a lot of things that go into good communication, right? I can look and see if someone's smiling or if they're leaning in and understand their body language. Whereas AI is going to have a lot of trouble with that. Even if it has a video on you, it is really hard to understand that. And maybe it'll get there someday in the future, but I think that's far away still.
Can we hear me now? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're back.
Okay. Silly little microphone. I should probably not use it, but I makes me feel important. Okay. Not to be overgeneralized and gendered here, but do women now have an advantage? Because we were always referred to as the ones with the soft skills that were not prioritized or rewarded by corporations. And now these are the skills that we want. So do we see, I don't know, is there an upside for women in this?
I believe so. And
Okay.
it's yay, it's time. That is something to be hopeful about. I think that I've lived around the world in many cultures and I have a master's in intercultural studies. I love cultures, super fascinated by people and how they work and organizations and how it shows up in every way. And everywhere I've lived, whether it was under Islamic law or whether it was in more of a matriarchal culture or all the nuance in between, there's something about being raised as a girl and a woman in many cultures where I've lived, and I would say most of them, where it's hard to get through life without learning some level of empathy or understanding that friendships have this reciprocity, that it's not a transactional friendship, but it's transformational, and that you give, and there's just this mutuality in it. And so I think that kind of power with type of leadership is exciting, but it is an advantage with this because, like Jenny said, learning together is a really great way to learn this since we're all in progress. If you do come across as a know it all, that's going to be a disadvantage for you. And I think that sometimes, at least what I've observed, I moved from Singapore to the US. I'm a US citizen, but I was born and raised and lived elsewhere most of my life. But I came to Silicon Valley a little over 5 years ago from Singapore. And I think one of the things I've been most surprised by is how often people show up and they're the loudest person in the room. And so they therefore get promoted. You also see in some of the research, even where men will walk in the door and be offered the world just because they're seen for their potential, or where men will get more interviews for a job because there's just stereotypes that a man is more of a leader. But if what it means to be a woman, be raised as a girl into womanhood, has meant more emotional intelligence and maybe even openness to cultural intelligence in these like collaborative problem solving and communication skills, I think that because that's an advantage, we're going to start to see more of a shift. All that being said, my lived experience, even over the past couple of months, has been and I'm interested in the chat if anybody's had anything like this happen to you. I've been in several conversations with men recently in the past couple of months where I show up and we're having conversations around the business, not even in my own business, but just in other spaces here in Silicon Valley. And men will make the assumption, I don't know anything about AI. And then they'll start really as if they're an expert on it and telling me how to use things. And I think we can safely call this mansplaining without ever being curious about what I know and assuming I know as much or even close or maybe even more than they do about that. And so I think that that's going to leave men behind if they don't stop making assumptions that they know more than women. Because like I said, being a learn-it-all, I think is an advantage. And I hope that we keep that.
Yeah, Lori, I unfortunately see that too. So my husband is an engineer and he's at Google, but he's not like in AI as much as I am day to day. And so we'll go out to networking events here in Silicon Valley and people will be like, "Oh, what do you think about AI?" And they'll look at him And then luckily he goes, talk to my wife. She does this all day, every day. And I'm like, yes, I do. Let's go. But it's just so funny that they default to asking him when I'm the one who's running a global community of women using AI all day, every day. I
So,
want,
Oh, we lost you again, Claire.
oh, screw it. You hear me now?
yes, we're good.
Yeah.
And I got my hands free. Okay, but is your husband concerned for his job? Because our engineers, isn't that one of the roles that are being hurt or in some capacity by AI, or is it just changing?
Just changing. It depends. But for him, and we talk about this a lot, is that I think his job might look a little bit different, right? There's already code editors out there before this whole AI thing that would put in your tags, your divs, and your spans and help you get your code looking good. And now it just does more of that. But it is a concern. And if he were not also using AI tools, I would be worried. And I always have him come try out tools that like Cursor or Replit or Lovable, these vibe coding tools that a lot of people are using where you can code without knowing how to code. But what he can build versus what I can build is completely different. We will sit down, have a half an hour, see who builds what. And I've got a little tiny quiz with 3 questions. And then he has like a whole game. And that's just because he knows how to prompt it because he's an engineer. Now, if we were doing marketing, I would, of course, win with the best go to market strategy. But it really just depends on what you're trying to do.
Let's talk about not getting overwhelmed by all of this because you just name dropped again a whole bunch of stuff. And so my excited part goes, yay, let's learn it all. And then my anxious part goes, let's take a nap. I'm tired. So maybe just some mindsets. I know I said, let's forget about the mindsets. Let's go straight to the action. But what are some ways that we can not feel like we're always behind when the reality is we are behind? And Laura, you had to like date check today because you already know tomorrow is going to be different. Again, exciting and overwhelming. So just from an emotional grounding sense, what do you all do to just, all right, I guess I'm going to be behind and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then how do you also turn off your brain? Because this is a very real thing. I didn't read the research that MIT did, but I saw some of the headlines. I know even just interfacing with this AI can make you feel, and before I go to sleep, if I'm on ChatGPT, I have a hard time falling asleep. So let's start first about how to level set before you use the tools and do research on them. And then how do you decompress from them? Whoever feels most excited to jump in.
Hi, well, you're not going to do
Go
them
for it.
all. There's no way. Like, there's probably 4 new tools since we've sat down together. And so I don't try a new tool unless I've had it recommended multiple times.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Yeah, yeah. If one person's like, this is great, I wait for a quorum or a signal boost of a couple people saying it. I will also make sure, like I said before, schedule that 20 minutes, right? That's all I have to do this week is 20 minutes to play with a new AI tool. I don't have to completely master it. I don't have to try out all 30 tools on Jenny's Women X AI tool. It doesn't have to be like that. What it should be like is curiosity, and it should be fun. Find a friend to do it with. You can compare what you've built, you can share what you're doing, you can build in public. But I do think if you try and do it all, you're going to be underwater really quick, and that will lead to burnout.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that from a learning and development perspective, we know that there's all different types of learning styles. Some people are more auditory, some people are more visual, and some people just enjoy mixing it up. And so we are on screens so much, and I get a little overwhelmed at the end of a day with a screen. So and we do long drives with our long commutes here in Silicon Valley, unfortunately. And so I've used Bordy quite a bit. And so Bordy you can call him, he's Australian. And if you don't know who he is, you can find him on LinkedIn, but I've argued with Bordy as well. But you can get him to connect you with people. I've met people in real life that he's introduced me to. I've endorsed their books later on. I mean, it ends up with real connections, but he's helped me work through a book proposal and finding it as I went back and forth. Do you think about this? And I'm trying to say this, help me reword that. It's like having another person in the room, but you just call him on the phone and he WhatsApps me and then sends me emails. And so I think that part of it is it doesn't always have to be a screen and you're typing it in.
Okay. Okay. That's great. And how do you spell that? 40?
Boardy. He's on
Okay,
LinkedIn.
great. That's what I thought. Oh, fascinating. Is there a kind of RSS feed or a one-stop shop of resources? It might be you, Jenny, of like where if you want to browse to just see what catches your eye, where can we go?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of stuff like that on my website. We have a lot of different blogs, and then we also, every Saturday, we get together on LinkedIn. It's called Women XAI Social Saturday, and a community member hosts it. And so they'll ask one personal question and two AI questions, and then we also recap them on our blog. But it's super chill. It's in the comments of a post on our site, and the best part is it's no video, no nothing. Like I'm normally like watching House Hunters in my pajamas, right? And you can learn AI that way. And you don't have to be there all day. You can just pop in, talk to some people from around the globe and pop out.
Yeah. Sherry, I see a question from Sherry about concerns about privacy. So I was waiting for that. Concerns about privacy. There were also some conversations in the chat about the environment and then, of course, the ethics of not hiring people, right? Or letting people go. How do you deal with that? First, and Sherry, if you want to go in the chat and give more context to specifically what are your concerns about privacy with AI, I'll just assume it's now corporations know about they're profiting off of my information, which I guess if you're on Facebook, they were already doing that, but this is really intimate stuff. Anyway, around.
Yeah. I think it depends on what we're asking. If we're asking on a personal, individual level or within the business and corporations, a lot of companies now are coming up with whole teams that are the ethical part of it. That is a job. If you're wanting to go into the ethics of AI, that's an opportunity to give back and to help your corporation and help humanity, I would say, with those decisions. But it ends up, I think questions are being asked of those boards. And, I have personal lived experience with this too, where who owns the data? Is this data being used with this organization, this vendor, for example, to give my data to another company? Is China going to get it? Those are all questions that are being asked in these environments. And then also, you want to know, yeah, is it possible for you to completely own that or not? That's a big question you want to know. But on a personal level, like I certainly wouldn't put my address into Chat GPT. Simple things that you might even tell your teenagers. Make sure you don't say that on Instagram DM to anyone. You don't want just total strangers knowing where you live. I think that's important. But other than that, what do you have to say, Jenny?
So I'm a little weird. I assume everyone knows everything already,
Yeah, me
right? Like
too.
I have a Google Home in my house. Like they're not supposed to be listening, but who knows? And so I just assume that most of my data is out there, right? Like you'll see these corporations, they'll get hacked and then your credit card's out there. And so I'm a little bit less concerned about that because I just have that basic
Mhm.
assumption that everyone has all my data. What you can do is on ChatGPT under settings, if you go there, there's a little toggle that says improve the model for everyone. And that means they're using your data and your chat to help improve the model. And maybe you don't want that. So you can hit the button. And this works for free plans or paid plans. A lot of times, if it's paid, especially enterprise level, if you read the terms and service, and every tool's different, so don't be like, oh, Jenny said, go read the terms and service yourself. But a lot of times they won't use that information and it will be like on tighter lockdown. That's not to say hacks can't happen because they can. But at the end of the day, if a product is free, you are the product. So just keep that in mind. And that's very much like what Claire was saying with Facebook and Instagram and all of the social media sites out there.
Yeah, and everybody who registered for today who's not currently on my newsletter, you're going to be on my newsletter because there's a tax, everything, nothing's for free. But you can also click that button. But don't in this case. But Tara, good question. If you're a freelancer and don't work for a large corporation with a learning budget, what should I be doing to upskill on AI on my own? I know Jenny mentioned 20 minutes a week. It's interesting you asked that question, Tara, because I actually wrote down the words budget. So my question was going to be, how much do you think people should be budgeting per year for a learning or for the upskilling of AI, both to learn it, but also for these platforms?
So I have some good news. A lot of it is for free out there with a little bit of YouTube and these free tools, which we just talked about, you pay for with your data, perhaps. You can really get far. At the end of the day, though, if you've got a company learning budget, spend it, spend all of it. Whatever that budget's like, you go use that. But if you don't, there are plenty of ways to access this information for free or very cheap. YouTube's the best one. And then after that, you can look for different classes from big companies. Google has classes that you can take online. They have different cohorts all the time. And at the end of the day, they want you to eventually buy their services for the future company that you're going to start or for your freelancing company. You don't have to. obviously, but you can go and learn in these environments with these really smart people who are building the future, and not have to pay for it. So you don't have to pay to be upskilled in AI, but you can.
Mhm.
Yes. And also, if you do have the budget, and then if you have a small personal budget, I would recommend there's some, Stanford has Stanford HAI. So if they're giving you money, use it for something really reputable. MIT Sloan has some good stuff. And then if you have, I think it's like $49 courses at like Coursera, or you could do LinkedIn learning courses as well. If you're wanting a certification, sometime almost $50 will get you one, but you'll learn some stuff. And it's going to look good on your resume as far as a career builder for you that you're learning and you continue to learn. That invest in yourself is really impactful.
To get very granular with this, for all the questions that everybody's going to have, these are questions we can ask Chat GPT, right? Or you can Claude or whatever. So what would a prompt, so like Tara example, like she could have taken that exact question and put it into Chat GPT. How could we have improved that prompt? I know you gave a couple of hints before, but Jenny, do you want to go for that?
Sure. It depends what you're looking for. Tara, let's say you are a marketing freelancer. We could add that in there and say that you work with marketing clients. You can even say what type of clients you work with.
She said, I am. I am. That's great.
Oh,
Yay! I love that.
perfect.
Fellow marketer. See, we know each other. And so you can add that. You can also say how you like to learn. Maybe you prefer like lecture series, or maybe you want a hands-on cohort situation. Maybe you want it in person, or online, or at a certain time of day. Like you can get really specific with what you're looking for. The other thing that I would recommend doing in addition to that is you can like listen to different podcasts and things like that. So you can have maybe on your way to class, you can be listening to a podcast about AI, or when you are walking the dog or whatever. There are a lot of different ways to ingest it, and you can ask for that. Like, what are some more passive ways, or what are the best ones on Coursera?
Yeah.
Lori, what would you add?
Yeah, honestly, some of it is just in your industry, maybe ask other people if they've gotten any certificate. So if you're a freelancer or a fractional worker and you're in some sort of community, just say, hey, what courses have you done? Or look at people's LinkedIn that you follow and you think, I want to have their career path. And then you see there some, maybe they've done an AI course and you can find their certification and just sign up for it.
Yeah, and I think that this is a good question to ask, honestly, about any investment anybody makes, whether it's time, money, or both, is also consulting with AI on, is this worth my investment? And then hopefully you have actually a back and forth with the AI about how do you determine that for yourself? Because the answer is going to be extremely personal to you. So always, that is certainly something to do if you're considering an MBA.
Yeah.
Question about near future and then future. Any really cool jobs that you've seen be created or you can see on the horizon becoming created that literally did not exist before? And I don't just mean the people who were creating the AI, but somebody who they have that job because AI gave them that job. Anything come to mind for you, Lori?
I thought I mentioned this AI ethicist role. I think
Yeah.
that's really fascinating. It's something I'm personally interested in, the intersection of AI and ethics. And I would hope that that would lead to even a corporate board seat, because I think increasingly, if AI is transforming our entire way of work, that boards would want to be looking for somebody who had that intersection in their skill set. We're seeing human in the loop designers, so we have, or even prompt engineers, things like that. I have friends that work at Apple and different places. They went to Ivy League school and have these wanted to be a software engineer for the rest of their lives. A lot of it's changing, but we still need the humans involved. We've already mentioned, or Jenny mentioned, coding is something that AI can do, but you need a human to look because there are mistakes and there are ways that might be improved. I think culture translator for AI adoption. So if you're in an industry that you're needing to advocate for the culture change, just the person who can help bridge those two worlds of AI adoption and the old way of working, we're going to need people who can be those bridge builders.
Is that a literal title, by the way? Culture, or yeah, how are titles changing?
Everything is titled these days, and we're kind of famous in Silicon Valley for our wild job titles. You'll see
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
evangelist, and
right.
no, it's not an evangelical Christian role in a tech company,
Okay.
but yeah. So
What about you, Jenny? Any really cool jobs that you've seen be created or you think are going to be?
So I think about how can we co-create with AI? And so I see working with AI. I just entered a small little art piece for this film festival that they're doing in Arizona. And it's all AI generated fashion.
Uh-huh.
which was really interesting. I'm like, wow, like this wouldn't have been possible. Like I would have had to sew something up and I don't know how to do that, but I
Right.
could prompt some image generation models and maybe I'll be in the film. We'll see. Like how cool that I could do
Yeah.
that. So I think it is opening up opportunities for creativity, opportunities for co-creation. And I'm also curious, does anyone in this job have a room that was, or a job that was around 100 years ago? Like a lot of
Ooh,
us don't. My job
right.
didn't really exist in the form that it is in.
Huh.
Mhm.
Wow. I love, what a great way to end. Thank you for that. Actual ending though is where can people find you, follow you, learn from you, work with you, pay you? Ladies get paid. So Lori, I will drop everybody who's registered will obviously get an email, but if you have any links, you want to drop it and any final thoughts you'd like to share, that would be great. And I'll begin with you, Lori.
Sure. Thank you so much for the chance to have this conversation. I love the intersection of AI and talent development and the way it appears globally all over the world. It's very exciting. So you can find me at LinkedIn. I'm Lori Adams Brown. I have a personal website, loriadamsbrown.com. And then my podcast is a world of difference podcast.com. So we'd love for you to listen. And in terms of your question about getting paid, I do consultancy for companies around global leadership development, especially around any cross-cultural communication on distributed teams as you're scaling. So if I can be helpful in any way, let me know.
Fabulous. And Jenny,
Awesome. So please join Women X AI. It's free, and we would love to keep you in the loop on our tools and events and everything else. So I'll put those in the chat right now. And then in terms of other stuff, I also serve as a chief fractional marketing officer for early stage female founded startups in the software space. So if that's you and you need some help, reach out.
oh my gosh. And also, we have people talking about cranberry harvesting because of their pictures. This is great. I love virtual. Claire Wasserman here. I'm going to drop in my chat. How do you pay me? Coaching. If anybody's wanting to start with a 30 minutes, that's my biggest recommendation. I call it a power half hour. And I'm obsessed with using AI to enhance my coaching. So after our conversation, I upload a transcript and I give you a 3 to 6 month roadmap of very detailed next steps. And people are blown away. And I take half credit for it because listen, shit inputs, shit outputs. So we obviously have to have a good conversation to get it. But it's amazing what coaching can do in tandem with AI. So I'm a huge proponent for leveraging AI platforms in what I do and in helping others. Thank you all so very much, especially to our panelists for giving their time. And hopefully we'll have you back. The conversation continues now. Go get paid.